Alright, how's it going, everybody? This is -1, talking about the tier list and kind of my thoughts. And so far, I think Onomat, tier 1, Shiranui, tier 2, Thunder Dragon, also kind of tier 2, and then down here we kind of have like a tier 3 of Harpies, Resonator, Cyber Dragon. And I think this is the most malleable, but so for now, these are just the decks I have tested and like giving my opinion on. I think some other decks could maybe make it into this range, but until you know, unless something really crazy is discovered, or until I like test those strategies, I think this is kind of my thoughts on the tier list and how it should look. The reason why I'm kind of putting Onomat at tier 1 is for a few reasons, and I think Onomat really lacks any hard counters in the current meta. And if we're looking at tools Onomat has, uh, nothing is really the same as Onomat in terms of what options the deck has available. Um, it can consistently search out Gaia Sister, and then Sister can search out Gaia Bolt. And so Gaia Bolt is hard removal for just one card, which is pretty strong. So it has hard removal that is both, that's like searchable through the skill. And beyond that, it also has MST, so that before it commits to the board, it can just remove back row to prevent it getting interrupted. It can run Book of Moon, it can run Treacherous Trap Hole still. So for those reasons, like the main deck alone is very strong. And then if you go to the extra deck, you see just powerhouses. So Steel Swarm Roach, probably the most effective floodgate that nobody is really talking about. Um, Steel Swarm Roach just shuts down any sort of like direct synchro strategy. If you try to, it also shuts down Chaos Dragon Levianeer, which is a major player in Thunder Dragon. So Harpy, they can't summon Cyber Slash, otherwise it gets negated by Roach. They can't. Levianeer can't be summoned. Resonators essentially just choke to Steel Swarm Roach. Unless they see a Book of Moon or a Treacherous Trap Hole, they cannot play the game as long as Roach is on the board. So, for that reason, I think Onomat has like one of the most effective floodgates presently. And it's also very good against Shiranui if they try to summon from board. Shira can summon from grave, which kind of plays around it, so to say, but it definitely prevents Shira from accessing some of their options. And if the floodgate wasn't enough, going second, they have a lot of tools. They have a bounce in M7. They have a banish in Malevolent Sin. They have a non-targeting destruction, which is also like spell speed too. It's like a quick play effect in Digital Bug Rhinobus. So Rhinobus is the newest edition, and all of these tools kind of just combine into a deck that can handle a lot of strategies. And I think out of all of these decks, the only thing that Onomat really loses to is maybe Shiranui. This is because Shira has like just a bunch of trap cards that can effectively kind of like shut down Onomat turns, and it's difficult for Onomat to really play into multiple disruptions, you know? Trying to think of other things. Thunder Dragon, I think, kind of goes even with Onomat. There are times when Onomat has to take like major risks to win. However, I think as long as Onomat takes those risks, a decent amount of the time, the risk will just pay off. Like Onomat will be in positions where they can say, okay, if you have a hand trap, I lose, but if you don't have a hand trap, I win. And it will just go for it because that is the play to win. And a decent amount of the time, that just works because, well, you can't. How should I say this? Like, you can't have the hand trap all of the time. So for that reason, like Thunder Dragon, if your opponent plays afraid, then Thunder Dragon does decently well. It's just that when your opponent like calls out the bluff and says, "Okay, you don't have it," or it's like, "If you have it, I lose regardless, so I'm just going for it." And for that reason, I think Onomat and Thunder Dragon is a lot more closer to even than some people believe. I already mentioned why Resonator was a very strong matchup for Onomat. Steel Swarm Roach is just dominating card. Harpy, I think Harpy is doing a lot better right now, just because people are uh, they're not running uh, number 18 Heraldry Patriarch, and that was really what kept Harpies in check for Onomat, and that's like what made Onomat such a strong counter to Harpy, because they can easily make any rank 4 in the game. Um, so for that reason, Harpy was just a very dominant matchup. Presently, their Onomat is not using Patriarch, so the Harpy matchup is a little more difficult. But Onomat doesn't really use any back row in like a traditional sense. The same way, um, like Shira or Resonator might try to use back row. So Harpy's Hunting Ground kind of not effective against Onomat. Also, a turn one digital bug Rhinobus is very strong against a Harpy opener, so Harpy will try to summon Chandler, and then a non-targeting destruction just like kills the monster. It doesn't matter if Harpy tries to chain Swallow's Nest, the monster dies regardless. So uh, yeah, Harpy kind of struggles against Onomat, and then Cyber Dragon. The reason why Cyber Dragon is here is because it's another OTK deck. So if Onomat goes first, Cyber Dragon is like, all right, time to OTK. Thank you for playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links. And if Cyber Dragon goes first, Onomat says, all right, time to OTK. Thank you for playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links. So yeah, they just go back and forth OTKing each other. Shiranui, another deck. Uh, well, okay, it's not actually OTKs because Rhino Bus forces the game to be a little more grindy. However, even though there is a turn of like not being OTK'd, one side of the matchup has to spend resources on their first turn to ensure that they don't get OTK'd. Meanwhile, on the second turn, the whoever goes second gets to like spend their resources on either A, just OTKing, or B, like breaking a board and just putting themselves in a position that they can OTK next turn. So yeah, for that reason, I think Cyber Dragon it kind of competes with Onomat in the sense that it's just like OTK versus OTK deck. So yeah, I think Shiranui pretty much the reason why it's here is because it can compete with Onomat. Because of all the trap cards and interruptions. The other matchups are not so good. Harpy matchup, very bad. Harpy just classically just eats through any sort of back row. Cyber Dragon, same story, especially like Cyber Dragon. The Cyber Dragon OTK is like infamous for demolishing anything that tries to set trap cards. And Thunder Dragon has Chaos Dragon Legionnaire. There are some tools that Shiranui can do or use to, cheese some wins. They also have Fiendish Chain. They have a bunch of flip downs to kind of prevent exceed plays. But generally, it's difficult for Shiranui to consistently, win in this matchup without Thunder Dragon opening like a weaker hand. Resonator is a matchup where Shiranui excels quite well, I'd say. Just because Resonator is a synchro deck, so flipping down their like synchro materials just prevents them from climbing. And Floodgate is just so difficult to deal with as Resonator that I think Shira definitely just wins that matchup very hard. It's like 70-30 or something. Yeah, that's the majority of Shiranui's matchups. I'm trying to think if there's anything else to it. No, I don't think so. And then lastly, the last thing I'm going to focus on is Thunder Dragon. And Thunder, we see It can kind of compete with Onomat, I should just say. It can compete with it, but it doesn't like reliably win the matchup enough. Um, it has like a really good. It has a good Shiranui matchup. It has a good like Harpy matchup. It can do it well against a lot of the decks. It's just that above all else, Thunder Dragon struggles to consistently do well. And I think that's the just like the biggest downfall of Thunder Dragon is that you cannot like play. You can play 10 games and then you can just open really well in all of them. But Thunder Dragon is probably the only, well, next to Cyber Dragon. But these two are like the only decks where you can play 10 games and you can brick 10 games in a row and be like, well, yeah, that's how the deck works, you know. So for those reasons, I think Thunder Dragon, it's definitely tier two. It's just it can't be higher just because of the consistency is a major weakness. Now to talk about some other things, most namely, could Onomat be tier zero? Because I've already mentioned like, well, it has a good matchup against pretty much everything, and the mediocre or bad matchups are very few and far between. So what wouldn't that make Onomat into the tier zero range? Um, and the way I would answer that is, kind of. I can understand how Onomat could be put into a tier zero because they really lack a lot of inherent counters. Onomat just dominates a lot of, or I guess I shouldn't say dominate. It has favored matchups like across the board, and it really only loses to one deck that is, in a sense, like built with the hopes of playing against Onomat. Um, the reason why it wouldn't be tier zero, I would say, is really that it doesn't dominate hard enough. And it's like it's not in a position where every other deck is kind of just like warped in order to fight Onomat. So for that reason, I don't think you can like effectively say that it's a tier zero deck. And then to address some of the concerns in chat, because I know some people have been talking about it. What are my thoughts on Gaia and my thoughts on Fire Kings? So the reason why I'm not putting Gaia in tier 3 is because I think Gaia struggles against multiple decks on here that I don't think I can comfortably say it's like a tier 3 deck. I think Onomat matchup is just really bad in my opinion. Onomat is just like a straight OTK deck and it has removal for pretty much every part of Gaia. So for that reason, it's really difficult for Gaia to get a foothold in that matchup. Gaia's a normal summon reliant deck. So if their normal summon is not like successful, or if Rhino Bus, for example, just destroys one of the monsters that Gaia summons on their first turn, then their turn kind of just ends. And then Shiranui, just like trap cards are good right now. That's the TLDR. Floodgate is really difficult for a lot of decks to fight against. Generally, I have not tested that matchup specifically. I would assume that whoever goes first should just be favored very hard. But like trap cards and like hard removal options generally do very strong against Gaia. Gaia can do pretty well against Thunder Dragon. It's just that doing well against something that isn't the best deck is less valuable than doing well against the best deck. Or like losing to the best deck is a very big detriment, and that's something you should take into account. Harpy, Resonator, and Sidra matchups, these are like a little less relevant, so I think saying like if Gaia auto wins or auto loses any of these matchups, which I don't think it does, that is much less valuable information than how it does against Onomat, how it does against Shira, and how it does against Thunder Dragon. So for that reason, I think Gaia's kind of not like why, or it's kind of like not on par to be in tier 3, in my opinion at least. I think, and then another deck is Fire Kings, and I spent some time talking about it earlier, but I think Fire King is definitely a deck that can succeed, but the way Fire King operates and it functions is very counterattack oriented. Um, Fire King kind of struggles when the opponent doesn't like fully commit to something, or how should I say, the opponent doesn't just get blown out by a Garunix. A lot of the games that Fire King is successful in typically requires a mistake from the opponent. So in some ways, I made the joke that Fire King's biggest strength is the opponent it's playing against. Because if the opponent makes a mistake, Fire King can capitalize very well. And it can also, I mean, I'm not going to discredit it to say it can only win at games the opponent makes a mistake. It does have tools to, win games that the opponent will play as well as they can, but even still, Fire King will come out on top. But ultimately, I think Fire King kind of struggles to consistently win, again, have like consistent winning matchups against these decks if these decks play correctly. I think the Onomat matchup, maybe if it just runs more hand traps, it can do okay. But it's like Shiranui, I don't think it can reliably beat, and then Thunder Dragon is another situation where I think it's really dependent on mistakes in some cases. I think I could maybe see Fire King making it into a tier 3 position. It's just that as of now, I think Fire King really struggles when the opponent is not giving the game away. Alistair makes Spectral Sword sad. Yeah, that is true. Um, you just have to understand that in a game of numbers, Alistair is only 2 in at minimum 20, at most 30. So to a degree, like they won't always have Alistair. So a very fast early game allows Shira to play. Just play 3 Fiendish Chainside, Shadow Mirror. Yeah. I think so. For that reason, for those reasons, I think Fire King maybe could make it into a tier 3 position, but for now, I don't think that it can reliably win against the main decks. And yeah, that's it for this video. Thank you everybody for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Peace.